Hey y'all. So it is ya boy, Mr. T-Bone. Just gonna go ahead and talk to you about the last lesson for the week, lesson 43, equivalent division problems, finding unknowns in fractions and decimal problems. Okay. So equivalent division problems are interesting. Okay, these are problems that seem easier to perform mentally, that's asking you which problems seem easier to do mentally. 700 divided by 14 or 350 divided by 7, right? There is, you know that 7 times 5 equals 35, right? And so 35 divided by 7 is 5. You add that 0 is 50. So 350 divided by 7 should equal 50. And if you know that this A is just double 350 divided by 7, right? Both those numbers are doubled. I should be able to just do 350 divided by 7 equals 50 times 2 to get that original answer. So what you're essentially doing is it's very similar to what we've done in the past is and what we've been kind of working on a little bit with our mental math is it's figuring out that you can break this math up into different ways that hopefully should be easier for you, right? So the answer should be 700 divided by 14 should be 100. 50 times 2, okay? So we go through and we get, by dividing both the dividend and the divisor by the same number, in this case 2, we formed an equivalent division problem that was easier to divide mentally. Oh, I'm sorry. The problem is just you don't have to multiply it by 2 at the end. If everything's been divided by 2. Okay, I'm sorry. I got a little confused there. So these are actually going to have the exact same answers, right? 14 is going to go into 700 as many times as 7 is going to go into 350. Okay, so 7 is going to go into 350 50 times, which means that 14 must go into 700 50 times, which makes sense because 14 times 100 is going to be 1,400. So yeah. All right. By dividing the dividend and divisor by the same number, in this case 2, we formed an equivalent division problem that is easier to divide mentally. So in this case, they're showing that 700 divided by 14 is an equal fraction as 300 divided by 7. Okay, so this is really just building off of what they did last week. Okay. And then you can multiply things both by the same divisor. Sorry. 7.5 divided by 1/2. So here, instead of trying to divide by 1/2, they multiplied by 2, right? They didn't want to have to deal with trying to do 7.5 divided by 1/2. So instead, they multiplied by 2 to get 15 divided by 1. This is the exact same problem, but now 15 divided by 1, the answer is 15. Nice and easy, right? So what they're trying to show you is that as long as you multiply by 1, 2 times 2, 2 divided by 2, right? You're able to get the same problem. You're able to get the same answer, okay? You can multiply by 1. So over here, just to showcase, we have 700 divided by 14, right? And then we rewrite that as 700 divided by 14 as a fraction, okay? Now, ideally, we want to solve this, but because it's a fraction, right, we can multiply this by 1. And what we're going to do is we can multiply it by, or I guess we can even divide it by 1. in this case because they're doing the top and bottom. And then that gives you the 350 divided by 7, which is easier to do. All right. Form an equivalent division problem for the division below. So if that one seems difficult to you, try cutting it in half. Okay, they're both even. Should be nice and easy. 8 divided by goes into 600. Hopefully you should be able to figure that out, right? Or at least be able to do the math on that a little easier. Okay. So it is a little difficult, but it shouldn't be too bad. These guys here, this is classic algebra. This is the sort of thing that we're really moving towards. D minus 5 equals 3.2. So if D minus 5 equals 3.2, and we remember our addition and subtraction facts, right? Then that means that D should equal 5 plus 3.2, or 3.2 plus 5. Okay, which means 8.2 equals D. Okay, so this is called, in some ways you'll see this, you can do it as the book talks about it, where you're using your subtraction facts or your addition facts. I like to think about it as adding the inverse. Okay, I have D minus 5 here and 3.2 on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the inverse. I want it to say D equals, because that's my answer, D equals. So I am going to, remember, you can always do whatever you want to this math problem as long as you do to both sides. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. If I wanted to, I could add 50 to both sides. That doesn't help me here, but I technically have the power. So now I have D equals 3.2 plus 5, which turns into 8.2. Okay. So you can then test too if you need it. This one might be difficult for you guys. If you have any trouble, please email me and let me help you out with it. If you are not having any trouble, go ahead and for the written practice, I want you to do 2 through 30 even, okay? All right, and that's that. That's your math for the week. Most of it was probably pretty easy, but this may be the harder part, okay?